right, moving on. We're going to change gears here. We're going to switch into the topic of the day. I'm going to talk for a little bit here, guys, which to kind of give us the background. But please, if you have questions, jump in. And if I missed anything important, because my co-host here in 20th Century All Stars know this story. But the title of today's episode is "Not Fade Away," and where that comes from is a Buddy Holly song, actually, that the Grateful Dead, at least for my likes, made popular. But it's kind of it's taken on a meaning in terms of the people that we meet and that come into our lives, and the idea that our love will not fade away, even if time and people go. And that's an underpinning for today's show. Back in June, early June, I met a guy by the name of Rich. I didn't know what his name was the time that I met him. I was driving from New Jersey to Connecticut on a rented Sportster with my dog on what was an emotional trip for me, and for reasons we don't need to get into. But it was a tough ride, and I was in Connecticut on Route 84, and a road I know you guys know well. It's technically east, but the way, if you're in Connecticut and you're going north and south, we'll say, as the compass, there's only so many highways you can take to do that. And there's 84, which runs diagonal kind of east to west. There's 91, which runs straight down the middle of the state. And then there's 395. And if you're on 395, you're either going to the casino or to buy drugs. So really, there's only two major highways in Connecticut, and this is one of them, and I've been on it thousands of times in my life. And I stopped at a gas station off of exit 16 on Route 84, and it's in a stretch between Hartford and Danbury, or Waterbury and Danbury more locally, where there's not a ton of easy on-off gas stations. So it's a favorite of mine. There's a little place next to the Mobile called Patty's Pantry, where you can get sandwiches and stuff, and the Mobile is quite well equipped as well. And this is silly sounding, I'm sure, but I can tell you that I have stopped at this gas station probably hundreds of times in my lifetime. And big part of because I have family that lives on either end of where this road spans, so we spend a lot of time. On that day, I was not feeling well, and emotionally. I was had a lot on my mind, and I was driving into a rainstorm with my dog on a rented bike, and on a trip I didn't really want to be on. And I wasn't feeling well, and I stopped at exit 16 like I always do, and immediately I saw this bright reddish orange bike and a rider on it. And as you do, I pulled up behind who I would later to come to find out was Rich. And when I tell you I got off my bike, this dude was positively floating. And I mean that in the most masculine, kick-ass biker way. This guy was levitating on the power of his own, I'm going to fucking ride the shit out of this bike. And he was kind of like pacing around and, doing taking a break. And we got to talking, and, we took pictures of Larry. He was really into Larry. And I couldn't find my stickers or the courtesy cards that I carry. They were buried in there. So we took a couple pictures, and I think I told you guys, I know I told this story on the air after it happened, and he had a really cool horizontal draw belt knife that I noticed that was really nice leather work. And at the time, this guy that I met, just for this brief moment, really gave me a shot in the arm. You're reminded immediately, I'm alone a lot, which is, not a fun way to ride sometimes. But when you just see one other rider, and it was like immediately I got this shot in my arm, and I felt how pumped he was. He had told me that and I'm not sure if I have the facts here exactly right. He had said that he had some time off, and his wife told him to, get out of the house for a bit, as our wives often do. So he said, okay, I'm going to Florida for a couple weeks. And that's where I met him. He was headed south to Florida, and I was headed north into New England. And I left that gas station feeling really good. And I told the story about meeting this guy several times on the air, and to certainly friends and family. So that happened back in early June. And just to kind of pause there for a minute, it's one of those when you're having a bad day or something like that. And Scott, you and I talked about this off the air recently in another context where somebody comes into your life even for a few minutes, and it sort of totally changes your perspective. And here was this guy who was just so happy to be out on the road and doing what he loved, and here I was worried about a million things that had nothing to do with riding a motorcycle, which is exactly what you shouldn't be doing when you're on a motorcycle. So he really helped give me a shot in the arm that day. Fast forward to a few weeks ago, and so let me stop there for a second, take a breath. I'll be a good presenter here. And that I don't know. Do you guys remember me telling that story, or is this happened in my dream?
I don't know. You tell a lot of stories.
Fair enough. I'll take that. Yeah, it would have been.
No, I'm
I am
kidding. I do remember.
I am curious though, because you're talking about somebody you met at a rest stop, at a brief stop, and
Yeah.
in that, it's not like you spent the week hanging with this guy,
No.
riding with him. If you could capsulize one key thought or advice or bolt of energy that he shared with you, or insight, what was it that really made you kind of like take 2 steps back and say, yeah, fuck yeah, and you did that? So
He was
could you
entirely
remember what?
yeah, he was entirely in the moment. When I say the guy was levitating, I mean, he was like, I just picture, I'm not making light of it, but I picture like a superhero, like, like floating a few feet off the ground, like on their own stoke, on the power of their own energy. And it was that, he was so in the moment that like you just wanted to be around him, like, and that's what it was. And it's not necessarily something that he said. You meet people, and this is not I don't think this is unusual or uncommon. It's but we meet people from time to time who are unintentionally charismatic and engaging when they just don't have to try to. You just want to be around them because they have positive energy, and that's what I needed, and they kind of just clicked. And that's really what struck me. And for what it's worth, I'm somebody, who's I travel by myself a lot, so it's I like meeting people on the road, if even only for a moment, especially the ones that kind of stay with you. And that's really what I thought had happened at the time was, here's another great memory you can kind of put in your book. And obviously there's more to the story here where I'm going. And I think even if there hadn't have been more to the story, I would have remembered Rich for a very, very long time. And that's not to say that I'm not, like virtue signaling or something like that. I remember, I forget stuff about my own kids all the time. It's just to say, you just know when somebody leaves like an indelible mark on you, even if it's something, that's seemingly inconsequential at the time. So let me keep us rolling along here. So fast forward to a few weeks ago, and I got a message on Instagram from someone I didn't recognize. And as I'm sure you guys know, I get lots of messages. If it weren't for porn bots, I'd have no friends at all, right? So you get lots of messages on Instagram that aren't always sincere, but this one caught my attention. I looked and I realized that it was a woman by the name of Christina, who had found pictures that Rich had took when we met at the gas station, and she tracked me down through Instagram and shared with me that Rich had been hit by a drunk driver in Florida and passed away. So this was in, I think, early August, and so that kind of hit me like any time that happens when you learn about somebody's death, hits you like a punch in the gut. I was, on the one hand, I was really and am incredibly sorry for the family and their loss. But I don't know how else to say this other than I was really happy that they found me. So it's weird to say those things in the same sentence, just because I was really glad that somebody who knew this guy found me, because, and this is selfish, I guess, but because it gave me the opportunity to tell them that I had met Rich, and that it wasn't, just a chance encounter, or it was a chance encounter, but he left a really big impression on me. So I was very happy to hear that. This is, as I, took a look around and learned more about the situation, I came to find that Rich was a very accomplished chef. He was owner and co-owner of multiple restaurants in Massachusetts, an extremely active, diehard rider, and very active in the Latin American Motorcycle Association, or LAMA, and really just a really incredible husband and son and member of the community. And that's he had a big impact on a lot of people, from what I can tell. and it's sad, unfortunately, of course, that he's gone. But definitely, this is an opportunity for us to say fare thee well, and to help make sure that people like Rich, that they not fade away, that their memories not fade away. So that's what was the core part of today's show. I'm going to take a breath for a moment, give the rest of the crew a chance to jump in here, but thoughts, etc. You, Carlos, you've been riding for 40 years. Mike, you've been riding a long time. I got to guess that you guys have encountered this before, and so I'll stop and let you get a word in.
There's a gentleman that I still honor after 13 years of his passing. He was my riding buddy way in the beginning on the hard chapter, and we just kind of connected. I mean, we were about as opposite as could be, but we seemed to bond, and we kind of looked at everybody else with this disdain. And I used to make fun of his Harley because I said it sounded too much like a sewing machine. And after that, he got pipes that had the bigger rumble to it. And we had all these plans, and we all had these plans to be able to go to various rallies and such. But as life would throw a curveball on it, he got cancer. And in the last few years, I mean, I helped him get through, or try to get through as best as recover. And he wanted to do that last ride. He wanted to get that last bike, and he wanted to. And I helped him go and get that last bike. And he could hardly hold it up, but it didn't matter. He wanted to stand up on it and just hold it up. And and his last days when he passed away, his wife, his widow, had reached out to me. She says, now she was from a strict, I'd say fairly strict Jewish background. And she says, I want you to come to the synagogue dressed in your colors. I want you to be dressed up, and I want you to come into the synagogue with everything you got. So I came with two other guys, and we were with all our badges. And of course, the rabbi was hesitant to have us in the synagogue. And she came out with my friend's vest on and told him basically in a nice way, go fuck yourself, and these guys are going to be here. So that started it. And then when she said, I want you to escort his funeral procession, and the funeral director said, no, he's not going to do it. She again stepped forward from that. And ever since that period, I have three things that I still share with him. And that would be, he had big ass feet. My feet are 9.5. And he had like 10.5 boots.
Yeah.
He gave me his boots, and I was determined to wear his boots. So I could always say he always walks with me.
Yeah.
And I still have those boots 13 years later with a lot of inserts, but he walks with me.
Nice.
I have his goggles, and the goggles are okay, no problem with that. I have his chaps, so he protects me. So I have this thing that I say he walks with me, he protects me with my chaps. And the one last thing that she gave me, and what I was just showing him, was he loved his cigars.
Oh yeah.
And she said this is the only thing she told me I couldn't keep, but she would let me have it as long, she would lend it to me until I died, and which I'm supposed to give it back to the family.
Carry on.
And on him was etched in here an expression that he had, and I'll just finish it off here. He was always known to say, woohoo, what a ride.
Yeah.
His philosophy was, I don't want to die with a perfect body. I want to die with a body that's weathered, tattered, beat up, scratched up, scratching in there, and say, no, I want to go down in a place of glory. And to that end, I have this lighter, which I always carry with me to remember him. So if there's anybody that's there, and each time his anniversary, or I think of him, and I go out to his grave, he's buried in a military grave. I go out there, take a picture, and I send it to the family. I got the highest honor being called a mensch.
Yes.
And then beginning, I wasn't sure if I just got insulted, but I found out later on, no, a mensch is a good thing.
Yes.
It's a good thing. So I carry the title of mensch because of my friend Kevin.
I'm here. This is I don't know if this is going to get me into trouble with somebody, but I don't care. This is like what I'll blame it on Paulie Walnuts. This is what Paulie Walnuts from The Sopranos. I live in what would be described as Elvis country, and that is anywhere where there is a very, very, very few people of Italian and Jewish descent. And meaning there's no good pizza, there's no restaurants around here. I can't find a bagel, anything like that. Again, I'll probably get in trouble for this, but culturally, that food in the Northeast that's so abundant, is like that's making when you said mensch, that's the first thing I thought of was Ryan's Deli. But anyway, that's a really cool story, and maybe for another episode, file this one, guys, for. But what you're like the talismans and things that we carry and the things that we keep with us that either have intrinsic meaning to us some way or they came from somebody else, and that's a I think of the gold pocket watch scene from Pulp Fiction. If you guys have seen that movie, if you haven't, it's worth a few minutes just to watch the clip on YouTube. But yeah, that's and Carlos, it's worth noting. You should be commended because I know you are extremely active in Patriot Guard and other groups that, on a regular basis, help people make sure that their loved ones and their relatives get a good send off. So kudos to you for that. I'll if you guys again, if you have anybody else that you want to mention, please do so. I want to just to make a quick connection here. At the same time that I found out about Rich, unrelated to motorcycles and motorcycle riding, I found out that a very good friend of mine had died. And in fact, she died about a year ago, and I didn't know. And there's a lot of tragicness around the situation. But this friend that died, she was the wife of my college roommate and one of my best friends who also passed away, predeceased her by a couple of years. Both, not great circumstances. And I found out this news. The reason why I'm telling you this is I found this out around the same time that I found out about Rich. And this husband and wife couple that passed away, I'm still processing it and probably will be for some time. But one of the things I think I've concluded was Jay, the husband who died, was my best friend. I had a feeling he wasn't long for this world, and that's another story. When Amy died, it almost hit me even harder. And I think as I've tried to make sense of it, it was because, they were two people who were major characters in the story of my life. And I expected them to be in the story longer. And now that chapter is closed and, everything about them is gone, like and that, coming to that realization kind of hit me. And the characters in the story is the best analogy I can find for it. It helps me make sense of it. And the reason why I'm mentioning this is, I could tell before any of this happened, just in the moment that I met Rich, that he was the kind of person who was a major character. And he was somebody who was probably a major character in a lot of people's stories. And I didn't know him, but for a moment. But I can tell. I know what it feels like to have a character that you love, to lose a character that you love in the story of your life, and to not be able to get that back. And so I think I can understand, and I want to wish again, I'm sure on behalf of all of us, the most sincere sympathies to Rich and the family. To his mom, Christina, Sonia, his wife, thanks for reaching out. I hope that you guys, do the best that you can considering the circumstances. On behalf of Old and Away, we made a donation to the GoFundMe for Sonia and her family, Rich's wife. And again, we wish them all the best. Go easy, bro.